The ghost ship's return. The proximity alarms at Galactic Council Station 7 screamed their warnings across every deck. Controller Vexara, a seasoned Zelani with forearms and crystalline eyes, stared at her screens in disbelief. A massive energy signature had just materialized at the edge of the sensor grid, appearing from nowhere like a phantom emerging from the void. "Impossible," she whispered, her secondary arms dancing across the holographic controls. "Nothing can bypass our early warning systems." The station commander, a hulking Gorvak named Throne, lumbered onto the command deck. His scaled hide rippled with concern as he examined the readings. "What are we looking at, Controller?" Vexara's primary arms trembled slightly as she magnified the sensor data. "Commander, it's broadcasting an identification code. But that can't be right. The code belongs to a human vessel that disappeared 300 years ago." The command deck fell silent. Every species present knew the story of humanity's lost expedition ship. The UES Prometheus had vanished during humanity's first attempt to explore beyond the galactic rim, taking with it Earth's brightest scientists and most advanced technology of that era. It had become a legend, a cautionary tale told to young explorers about the dangers of pushing too far into the unknown. "Open a channel," Throne commanded, his deep voice resonating through the deck. The main view screen flickered to life, revealing a sight that defied explanation. The ship that appeared was indeed the Prometheus, but it had been transformed beyond recognition. Its original hull was now covered in a substance that seemed to absorb and redirect light, creating an effect where the vessel appeared to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Strange symbols pulsed along its surface in patterns that hurt to look at directly. A figure appeared on the screen. She wore a uniform that was recognizably human military, but modified with materials that shimmered with an otherworldly quality. Her face was human, but her eyes held depths that spoke of experiences beyond normal comprehension. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the UES Prometheus, requesting permission to dock and meet with the Galactic Council representatives," she said calmly. Her voice carried an odd echo, as if multiple versions of her were speaking in near-perfect unison. Thrawn stepped forward cautiously. "Captain Chen, your vessel has been missing for 3 centuries. Everyone aboard was declared dead decades ago." A slight smile crossed Chen's face. 3 centuries by your count, Commander Throne. Time moves differently where we've been. For us, it's been both an eternity and an instant." The cryptic response sent murmurs through the command deck. Vexara's fingers flew across her console, running every scan available. "Commander, their life signs are strange. They register as human. But there are additional energy patterns I've never seen before." "Captain Chen," Throne said carefully, "we'll need to follow quarantine protocols. Your ship will be directed to Isolation Dock 7. "Understood, Commander. But I should warn you, we didn't return alone. We've been followed by something that threatens not just humanity, but every species in this galaxy. We came back to prepare you for what's coming." 3 hours later, a small delegation from the Council Station boarded the Prometheus. The team included Commander Throne, Controller Vexara, the station's chief scientist Dr. Krell, a methane-breathing Vorthon, and 2 security officers from the warrior race known as the Thrakari. The airlock opened to reveal Captain Chen, waiting with 2 other crew members. Up close, the changes were even more apparent. Their skin seemed to shimmer occasionally, as if they were not entirely solid. Their movements were too fluid, too perfect, as if they existed partially outside normal spacetime. "Welcome aboard," Chen said, gesturing for them to follow. "I apologize for our dramatic return, but time is a factor." As they walked through the corridors, the visitors noticed that the ship's interior had been radically altered. The walls were covered in the same strange symbols that decorated the hull, and occasionally, sections of the corridor seemed to stretch into impossible geometries before snapping back to normal. "What happened to you out there?" Dr. Krell asked through his translation device, his gaseous form swirling with curiosity. Chen led them into what had once been the ship's conference room. Now it resembled something between a military briefing room and an alien temple. At the center sat a device that defied description, a crystalline structure that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. 300 years ago, we attempted to chart the void beyond the galactic rim," Chen began. "What we found there changed everything we understood about reality." She touched the crystal device, and the room filled with holographic images. They showed the Prometheus entering a region of space where stars didn't just disappear. They had never existed at all. It was a realm between dimensions, a place the crew had come to call the Void Realm. We made contact with beings that exist outside our normal understanding of physics, Chen continued. They call themselves the architects of reality. They've been watching our galaxy for eons, waiting. Waiting for what? Throne asked. For a species with the potential to transcend physical limitations. They've been observing thousands of civilizations, but humans possessed something unique. Our ability to adapt, to survive, to imagine the impossible and make it real. They chose us for an experiment. Dr. Krell's form shifted rapidly, indicating excitement. An experiment? What kind of experiment? Chen's expression grew serious. They enhanced us, merged our consciousness with the fabric of space-time itself. We exist now partially in this dimension and partially in others. We can manipulate reality in ways that would seem like magic to our former selves. To demonstrate, Chen held out her hand. The air above her palm began to ripple, and suddenly a small sphere of pure energy materialized, floating and pulsing with colors that didn't exist in the normal spectrum. This is just a fraction of what we can do now, she said. But the architects didn't change us out of kindness. They needed warriors for a conflict that spans dimensions. She touched the crystal again and new images appeared. Ships of impossible design, creatures that existed as living shadows, entire star systems being consumed by darkness that ate light itself. The Shadow Fleet, Chen said grimly. They're beings from a dimension where entropy won, where order never emerged from chaos. They consume realities, feeding on the energy of organized matter and space. They've destroyed countless dimensions and now they're coming for ours. Vexara's crystalline eyes flickered rapidly, a sign of deep distress. When will they arrive? By our calculations, within the next 72 hours, Chen replied. The architects sent us back to prepare our galaxy's defenses, but conventional weapons won't work against them. They exist partially outside our physics. Commander Throne stood, his massive frame tense. Then how do we fight them? Chen smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. We teach you what the architects taught us. We show you how to break the rules of reality itself. She gestured to one of her crew members, a man who introduced himself as Lieutenant Commander Jason Park. He approached the crystal device and began interfacing with it in a way that seemed more mental than physical. The Shadow Fleet can phase through normal matter, Park explained. They can ignore energy shields, slip past any physical barrier. But they have one weakness. They still need to interact with our dimension to feed. That's when they become vulnerable. The crystal projected a new image, showing modified weapons and defensive systems. The designs were partially recognizable as human technology, but incorporated elements that seemed to violate known physics. We've brought back plans for dimensional anchors, Chen said. Devices that can force the Shadow Fleet to fully materialize in our dimension. Once they're locked into our reality, they can be destroyed. But it will require every species in the galaxy working together. Dr. Krell's gaseous form swirled thoughtfully. This technology, it could revolutionize everything. Transportation, energy production, even medicine. Yes, Chen agreed. But first, we need to survive. The Prometheus has been modified to serve as a prototype battleship. We can engage the Shadow Fleet directly, but we'll need support from the entire Galactic Alliance. Throne turned to Vexara. Alert the Council immediately. Full emergency session. As Vexara hurried to comply, Throne faced Chen again.
Captain, I need to ask.
Are you still human? Chen considered the question carefully. We are what humanity needed to become to survive what's coming. We are still human at our core, but we've evolved. The Prometheus crew volunteered to be the first, knowing we might lose ourselves in the process. But we retained our humanity's greatest strength, which is, Throne asked. Our refusal to accept defeat, our determination to protect those we care about, and our ability to adapt to any challenge. Those qualities convinced the architects that humanity could be the galaxy's salvation. Suddenly, alarms began blaring throughout both the Prometheus and the station. Vexara's voice echoed over the communication system. Commander, we're detecting massive gravitational distortions at the edge of the system. Something is tearing holes in space-time. Chen's expression hardened. They're here earlier than expected. The Shadow Fleet must have detected our return. Through the viewports, they could see distortions in space itself. Reality seemed to twist and tear, and through the rifts came shapes that the mind struggled to process. Ships that existed as geometric impossibilities, forms that were simultaneously solid and void. matter and antimatter existing in impossible harmony. How many? Thrawn demanded. Chen interfaced directly with the Prometheus's sensors, her eyes glowing with otherworldly light. The advance fleet only. 12 vessels. The main force is still in transit between dimensions. Only 12? Thrawn sounded almost relieved. Chen turned to him with a grim expression. Commander, each of those vessels has the power to consume entire star systems. 12 is more than enough to destroy this entire sector. Park was already moving toward the door. Captain, should we prepare for dimensional combat? Chen nodded. Alert the crew. Full reality manipulation protocols. She turned to the delegation. You need to evacuate the station. We'll buy you time. But you must convince the Council to implement our defensive plans immediately. As they rushed back toward the airlock, Chen called after them. Commander Thrawn, there's something else you should know. The transformation we underwent, it's irreversible, but it can be replicated. If we fail here, humanity and any other species willing to make the sacrifice can undergo the same process. It might be the galaxy's only chance for survival. Thrawn paused at the airlock. At what cost? Everything you were, Chen replied honestly. But you gain the power to protect everything you care about. For humanity, for my crew, it was worth it. The dimensional war, the Shadow Fleet's arrival sent ripples through reality itself. On the command deck of the newly transformed Prometheus, Captain Sarah Chen stood with her hands placed on the dimensional interface, her consciousness extending beyond the physical confines of the ship. Through her enhanced perception, she could see the shadow vessels in their true form, existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously, their presence causing the fabric of space-time to decay around them. All crew, prepare for dimensional shift, Chen announced through the neural link that connected every member of the Prometheus. We're going to show them that humanity doesn't go down without a fight. Lieutenant Commander Park stood at the weapons console, his fingers dancing across controls that phased in and out of existence. Dimensional anchors charged and ready, Captain. But we only have enough power for 3 full deployments. Then we make them count, Chen replied. Outside, the evacuation of Station 7 proceeded in barely controlled chaos. Hundreds of vessels from dozens of species fled the station as the Shadow Fleet advanced. The lead shadow vessel, a thing of impossible angles and writhing darkness, extended tendrils of pure entropy toward the fleeing ships. Chen felt the moment arrive. Now, Park. The Prometheus erupted with light that existed in spectrums beyond normal vision. The dimensional anchor fired, a beam of crystallized reality that struck the lead shadow vessel. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the shadow ship screamed, a sound that resonated through dimensions as it was forcibly pulled fully into normal space. Target locked in our dimension, Park reported, firing conventional weapons enhanced with reality modifications. The Prometheus's weapons, modified during their time in the Void Realm, unleashed devastation. Projectiles that phased through multiple dimensions before striking. Energy beams that rewrote the laws of physics at their target point. Missiles that existed in quantum superposition until the moment of impact. The anchored shadow vessel writhed and twisted, trying to phase back to its native dimension, but the anchor held firm. Commander Thrawn's voice crackled over the communications. Prometheus, the Council is convening, but they need more time.
Can you hold them?
We'll do what we can, Commander, Chen replied, even as she guided the ship through a maneuver that defied conventional physics, sliding sideways through space without actually moving. 3 more shadow vessels converged on the Prometheus, their forms shifting and writhing as they attempted to envelop the human ship in folds of twisted space. Chen felt them trying to drag the Prometheus into their dimension, where the laws of physics would favor them. Not today, she muttered, and triggered the ship's reality stabilizer. The space around the Prometheus suddenly solidified, becoming more real than real. The shadow vessels struck the stabilized space and recoiled, their forms disrupted by the unexpected resistance. In the station's emergency council chambers, representatives from every major galactic species watched the battle in stunned silence. The ancient Urani ambassador, a being of living crystal who had existed for millennia, spoke first. The humans fight beings that should be impossible to fight. How is this possible? Dr. Krell, still processing the data from his encounter on the Prometheus, explained rapidly. The human crew has been fundamentally altered. They exist partially outside our dimension. giving them the ability to combat these entities on their own terms. "And they offer this power to all of us?" asked the Solanian representative, her telepathic voice echoing in everyone's minds. "At a cost," Thrawn reminded them. "The transformation is irreversible. Those who undergo it will never be the same." Back in the battle, the Prometheus danced between dimensions, appearing and disappearing, striking from angles that shouldn't exist. But the Shadow Fleet was adapting, learning the patterns of the human ship's movements. "Captain, we're down to 40% power," Chief Engineer Martinez reported through the neural link. "The dimensional shifts are taking their toll on our systems." Chen knew they couldn't maintain this pace. But then she felt something, a resonance in the fabric of space-time itself. She reached out with her enhanced senses and touched the minds of her crew. "Everyone link with me," she commanded. "We're going to try something the architects showed us but warned against using except in dire circumstances." The crew of the Prometheus, all 300 souls who had been transformed in the Void Realm, joined their consciousness with their captain. Their combined awareness expanded beyond the ship, beyond normal space, touching the fundamental structure of reality itself. Together, they reached out and began to rewrite the rules of the battle. Space itself became their weapon. The vacuum around the shadow vessels suddenly became dense, crushing in on them from dimensions they couldn't perceive. Time flowed differently in pockets around the enemy ships, causing parts of them to age millennia in seconds while other parts remained frozen. One shadow vessel tried to flee back through its dimensional rift, only to find the rift leading not to its home dimension, but into the heart of a star. Another found itself trapped in a causal loop, destroying itself over and over in an endless cycle. But the effort was draining the Prometheus crew. Chen felt members of her crew beginning to lose cohesion, their altered forms struggling to maintain existence while manipulating reality on such a scale. "Captain, we can't maintain this," Park warned, his voice strained. "We're starting to discorporate." Chen knew he was right. They had destroyed or trapped 7 of the 12 shadow vessels, but 5 remained, and the Prometheus was failing. Then, through the chaos of battle, new signatures appeared on the sensors. 50 Galactic Alliance vessels dropped out of hyperspace, led by a massive Gorvac dreadnought. Commander Thrawn's voice boomed across all channels. "Prometheus, the Council has voted. We're implementing your defensive protocols. Dimensional anchors deploying now." The Alliance ships, hastily modified with the technology Chen had provided, fired their own dimensional anchors. The remaining shadow vessels found themselves suddenly locked into normal space, unable to phase or shift dimensions. "All Alliance vessels, concentrate fire on the anchored targets," Thrawn commanded. The combined firepower of 50 ships rained down on the trapped shadow vessels. Without their ability to phase through dimensions, they were vulnerable to conventional weapons. One by one, they fell. But as the last shadow vessel died, it managed to send out a pulse through dimensions, a signal to the main fleet. Chen felt it through her enhanced senses. "Commander Thrawn, they've called for reinforcements. The main shadow fleet knows we're here and how to fight them." "How long do we have?" Thrawn asked. Chen consulted with her crew, their combined consciousness calculating probabilities across dimensions. 6 months, maybe less. But now we know they can be beaten. In the days that followed, the galaxy mobilized like never before. The technology brought back by the Prometheus was shared freely among all species. Shipyards worked around the clock to build dimensional anchors and reality stabilizers. Scientists from every world collaborated to understand and improve upon the designs. But more importantly, volunteers began stepping forward for the transformation process. The first was unexpected. Ambassador Urani, ancient and respected, addressed the council. "I have lived for 10,000 years in this form. I have seen the rise and fall of countless civilizations. If changing what I am means protecting all that I have watched over for so long, then I volunteer." Others followed. Warriors from the Thrakari, scientists from the Vorthan, engineers from dozens of species. Humanity, having proven the effectiveness of the transformation, established training centers where volunteers could undergo the process and learn to control their new abilities. Captain Chen stood in one such center on Earth's moon, watching a group of new volunteers, human and alien alike, preparing for transformation. General Harrison of Earth's Defense Force stood beside her. "How many do we have now?" Harrison asked. 3,000 across all species, Chen replied. "We're calling them the Dimensional Guard. When the main Shadow Fleet arrives, we'll be ready. And if we're not? Harrison asked quietly. Chen turned to him, and for a moment her form flickered, showing the multiple dimensions she existed in simultaneously. Then we'll do what humanity has always done, General. We'll adapt, we'll survive, and we'll find a way to win. The Shadow Fleet thinks they're dealing with the same helpless galaxy they've consumed before. They're about to learn what happens when you corner humanity and its allies. She looked out at the stars, where she could feel the distortions of the approaching Shadow Fleet. We disappeared for 3 centuries and came back changed. We came back stronger, and now we're not alone. The entire galaxy stands with us. The first battle had been won, but the war for reality itself was just beginning. And at its heart stood humanity, transformed and ready. Proof that sometimes you had to sacrifice everything you were to protect everything you loved. The Prometheus, scarred but functional, hung in Earth's orbit like a guardian angel. Its crew, no longer entirely human but still fundamentally driven by human courage and determination, prepared for the greatest battle in galactic history. They had returned from the void with power beyond imagination, but more importantly, they had returned with hope. The Shadow Fleet was coming. But this time the galaxy was ready, and at the tip of the spear stood humanity's ghost ship, returned from the impossible, ready to make the impossible possible once again.